We barrel into the offseason here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. The salary cap is out, and it's a lot more than people thought it would be. What does that mean for the Kansas City Chiefs? Does Chris Jones end up with the franchise tag? Jerry Sneed, will he be back? What happens to the defense if both of them are gone? Is there a receiver in free agency that makes sense? What left tackle is the right answer for the Kansas City Chiefs? What's their biggest need? They got a punter. What does it all mean? We talk about it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro was the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. It is free agent time. It is combine time. That's where Jeffri Chadiha and Eric Eager are as you watch this podcast, as they have travels and Indianapolis duties. So, pre-taped before we get the 7 questions that always pop up in the chat room. Is this live or is it taped today? You're watching the Red, Gold, and Bold. We did it a little bit earlier before the guys headed to Indianapolis. And let's start there. Jeff, salary cap number higher than expected. I know Eric wrote, has been pretty active on Twitter about this and has a great piece up at sumersports.com on free agency and everything that goes into it in cap room. Get to that in a second, but just your reaction. Does it mean anything that there's a few more bucks in your mind for the Chiefs? $255.4 million will be the cap number. That was beat some estimates by $7 million, some estimates by $12 million as to what it was going to be. What's it mean to you?
It's all relative. I mean, their number goes up, but then everybody else's number goes up as well, right? I mean, I think the things that they're looking to deal with in terms of accounting, Jerry Sneed, Chris Jones, those are big ticket items. So having a few more bucks helps, but that's not the kind of money they're not going to be living in the same area as the Chicago Bears or the Washington Commanders anytime soon. So it's still going to be some tough decisions about what they have to do financially. Probably means you don't have to do as much with someone like Patrick Mahomes and his contract to create space. But what they're looking for, along with those two guys, as far as a left tackle, as far as receivers, those things cost money. So yeah, having a few more bucks does make a bit of a difference.
All right, Eric, what do you think? 255.4, what's it mean in the Chiefs world?
In the Chiefs world, it means that they can be a little bit more competitive in keeping Jones and Sneed before the free agency period starts. That, they have first dibs on them. After, I agree with Jeff, it's all relative. And once you get into the free agency period, you're competing with teams who have about the same amount of money. So I think like in the next month, next 2 or 3 weeks, I think it matters a lot. After that, it doesn't matter much at all. For some teams who, like for example, the Giants, who are trying to decide whether or not they draft a quarterback this year, based upon whether or not they can like actually function this year, it helps them a ton because they don't have to like restructure Daniel Jones and move money out in the future and keep Daniel Jones for 2 more years. They can kind of hold tight, let him go after next year so then they can draft a guy. With respect to the Chiefs, it's just about those 2 guys over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Does that help, though, on the franchise tag part of things? Does that actually benefit the Chiefs maybe more than others? Because the franchise tag number doesn't go up. It's still based on the old salary cap numbers. So is that from a standpoint of if their goal was to keep a Chris Jones or to keep a L'Jarius Sneed, or at least be able to use the tag to hold them as a placeholder and try to trade them for draft picks, does it benefit the Chiefs, Jeff, maybe more than it does other teams?
To a certain extent, I mean, I guess the franchise tag. Way I understand that Chris Jones' number is supposed to be like 32 million, right? That's what was been reported. So that's money you can't spend on anybody else, right? And so that's a big factor. And people keep asking me about Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, and can they have both or none or one or the other? And it's just both those guys. It's a very nuanced conversation about both of them. With Sneed, as Eric said, and people starting to hear about, like, he's had some kind of a knee issue throughout his time here, and that was a factor in training camp. So, that's a big investment on a guy who might be injured in pro later in his career. And Chris Jones is going to be 30 years old in July. And then you can argue that they probably stuck their head into the tiger's mouth once here and didn't get bit by that. But to keep going down that road of spending a lot of money on him and hoping that he's going to sign, I expect it's going to be a very difficult process to get him signed to an extension, no matter what's going on with the salary cap, no matter what's going on with the amount of time they have available, because he's the number one free agent on the market. And everybody complains about their agents, but in the day, if you're an agent worth your salt, you're saying, we're going to see what's out there before we sign anything with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Jeff, you agree? Eric, you agree that this really probably doesn't affect them that much? I mean, or are they working diligently right now behind the scenes to try to get something done with one of these guys to avoid the tag? Are they getting ready to slap the tag on one of them?
Well, the tag does go up incrementally because it is a small function of the cap. So it did go up a little bit, but not enough, to your point, Petro. It like gives them some relief where there's like an opening there, but the tag number did go up. That being said, it does give them the opportunity to sign two, or to sign Jones, and then and also, I mean, what it signals is that if you sign Jones, for example, and you prorate the money over 3-4 years, the league, with the streaming and the just the overall health of the league, if you prorate that money, the cap value of $1 is going to go down substantially more than we thought, unless there's like a global pandemic again or something. So it gives them a little bit more of like assurances that if you make a longer term deal for a player where you have to prorate the money out a little bit, the Chiefs will be somewhat covered there. So yeah, I do think that they're working around the clock to try to get both. I would assume Jones before Sneed, which is different than what I would do just because of age and position. But I think both guys have their warts. Jones is older, Sneed has a knee, but they're both integral parts of what have won them Super Bowls the last 2 years.
Why? Let's dig a little bit deeper there. Why would you be working on Sneed? We broke it down this year, the first team, second team All Pros, which doesn't mean they're right, but I think people would probably invest in that more than they'd invest in the Pro Bowl. There was one that was 27. I think there were 3 that were 22 and 2 that were 24. 5 of the 6 were 24 or younger. It seems to be a young man's position. Why, when L'Jarius Sneed is heading into his 28-year-old season, would you be more inclined to invest in him? Just cost?
Because it's that, but it's also, with Sneed, for me, it's like the way that they can be matchup proof with him and McDuffie. Like the fact that no receivers this year had big games against them was big, right? And that's because McDuffie and Sneed can both do the same thing, but they can both do them against different types of players. McDuffie can do that against smaller players, so he can play inside, outside. He can blitz against smaller matchups, and then Sneed can do the exact same thing, but against bigger matchups. To me, that's the value in having both players. When before McDuffie got here, whenever they had smaller, shiftier players on the opposition, Sneed struggled, and as a defense, they struggled. This past year, it didn't really matter who the opposing wide receiver one was. They were able to lock that player down because both of those players were able to mix and match. Jones obviously leaves a huge hole in the middle of the defense, and they would have to address that. So that's kind of like where and versatility is more important in the secondary, and Sneed has that. Whereas, Jones isn't really versatile along the defensive line. I know he can swing outside and everything, but we've tried him. We've seen him tried at defensive end in a base, 4-3, and that didn't work. Like, he's really a 3 technique most downs, and then like a little bit of a bully rusher on third down. So that to me is why I think Sneed's a little bit more valuable. But I understand that Jones is like a bigger player, and it's harder to find those players, especially for this front office.
Let me run this by you for whatever it's worth, and maybe nothing. 30-plus-year-old corners. Again, first team, second team, all pro. Steven sent me this, by the way. I want to give credit to him. He did the legwork on it. There have been 4 that have made first or second team over the age of 30. This is 30 and L'Jarius Sneed is not 30, but to think in terms of if you would give him a multi-year contract and keep him, he would be ages 28, 29, and 30, presumably, when you have him. Let's see, 2014, Brent Grimes was 31 and 16. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and Aqib Talib were 30, and a 19, Richard Sherman, was 31. No one's made it the last 5 years or last 4 years. I mean, just from an age standpoint. On the interior side, again, Chris Jones is much more expensive to do it, but there is a little bit more recent success of 30-year-olds on the inside. In 2021, Cam Hayward at 32 and Aaron Donald at 30 made it. In 23, Aaron Donald made it this year at age 32. Sorry, I skipped past that one. 30-year-old Calais Campbell in 17, Cam Hayward as well did it 19 and 20. So it's a small group of players, but when you look at offensive line, it does look like big people, Jeff, maybe, or Eric, I don't know, big people age better.
Yeah, well,
more.
One thing I would say with corner, and look at what's happening with Tre'Davious White in Buffalo. Look what's happening with Xavier Howard in Miami. I mean, those guys were phenomenal players, and they're starting to break down, or to the point where obviously Xavier Howard doesn't have a job, is about not to have a job in Miami. So you have to be mindful of that, as those guys are all around the same age as L'Jarius Sneed is right now. So I think you're making a really good point there. And as far as the interior players, those guys you named really have a different playing style than Chris Jones does. Chris Jones is really more of a pass rusher. He's not ever been known as a run defender. Cam Hayward, Aaron Donald, Calais Campbell, both those guys, all 3 of those guys have been able to play a long time because they're still pretty good against the run. And in Aaron Donald's case, obviously still good against the pass. So the question about Chris is always going to be what it was last year, which is what's he going to do when he has the money? It's different when he's trying to get the money. And I'm not sitting here saying he's not going to play hard or give his best, but it's the danger here is always a danger you have when you're talking about trying to sustain a competitive team, a championship caliber team, which is, do you start thinking too much about the right now and not about what really could happen? You can sign these guys. Aaron Donald signed a big deal 2 years ago, and he was hurt the next season. Yeah. And that's a very real reality as guys get older, and people don't like hearing that, but they're not. The danger here is believing that you can control all these factors that helped them win championships the last couple of years, and the reality is you can't.
I think L'Jarius Sneed's kind of interesting, Eric, because of his safety background, right, at Louisiana Tech. Like, is that a reason to maybe go get him? I don't know that you want him at, what is it, 19.8? Is that the number for the franchise tag? But if you sign him, I saw his suggested market value was like $16 million per. Is he a little more intriguing than your normal corner? Because you can see the evolution over to safety the way Woodson did, the way Rod Woodson did back in the day. Charles Woodson did as well, as they kind of morph their way over. Or does that become way too expensive for Sky? Could he be the replacement for Justin Reed after one more year of Reed? He plays corner this year, and then he slides over and plays safety as he starts to lose a step.
Yeah, I mean, we could even see Justin Reed gone this year, right? If you look at his the way that his cap number is, Jalen Ramsey is in a similar boat from a body size perspective. That could be 100% the way it is, and that maybe is how they want to couch it to him if they want to do a long-term deal with him, is to say, like, look, like, you're going to be here long-term, like, your role is going to be defined in a certain way, and that versatility is what we really prize. So yeah, I think that's going to get expensive, because safety is not a position that generally gets paid a lot in the NFL. It's a position where players are available in abundance, so you don't, and the Chiefs do a good job here. They don't really since Eric Berry, which I think they've learned from, they haven't really gone out of their way to make those guys rich. So yeah, that could be a possibility as well, for sure. And they have young corners that can come in and step in. Watson, Williams. I thought Najee Johnson was probably going to get an opportunity to start for this team before he tore his ACL in training camp. So yeah, all of those are possibilities.
Yeah, I think it's not so much about the cost; it's about the team's history. And really, since Mahomes has gotten deeper in his career, they've really only paid big money to one guy, and that was Joe Thuney, right? Everywhere else, they've been trying to find bargains.
Juwan Taylor.
Yeah, I guess what you want. Well, offensive line, I guess what I'm saying.
Yep.
It was offensive line. Like to go into other parts of the team to make those kinds of investments. I don't think they're going to be throwing, piles of gold at either one of these guys, which makes it a lot trickier.
What is L'Jarius Sneed's value on the open market? I mean, do we know? Is he valued as one of the top corners in football, or is he valued as a good multi-talented piece? Not really the foundation guy.
I mean, I think you just have to look at who got first team All Pro and who didn't. I mean, Trent McDuffie, who got no interceptions, no, phenomenal player, second year guy, but like he got, he with the draft status got the accolades and not Sneed. Like I think that's a very important, thing to point out.
But
so I would say
this.
17.5 million tops.
Yeah, I would even go higher than that. I would think a team like Detroit, which is certainly cornerback needy, or even the Bears, they have Jalen Johnson there, who they may let go of. I mean, there's going to be teams out there who have tons of money who are going to be looking to throw money at this guy because really even though he didn't get the accolades, he separated himself by covering the Devontae Adams and the Justin Jeffersons and the people, the Deebo Samuels, the Brandon Ayuk's, all those guys who were top tier receivers. He was covering them and shutting them down.
So what happens? Let's make our predictions. What do we think happens with Jones? What do we think happens with Sneed when it's all said and done? Jeff, you want to start? You got an idea?
I think Sneed's gone. I think that's the easy one. As Eric said, they've drafted players to replace him. They've done a pretty good job of moving on from star players and finding ways to keep winning. The leverage they have is they've won championships when they've let guys go. And so that's going to be a factor there. I think Chris Jones is going to be messy again. I don't see them getting something done before the new year starts. So if they really love the idea of trying to pursue a three-peat, they franchise him. If not, then I think they franchise him, they trade him. I think that's what they do.
On who?
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones. Franchise and trade and walk on L'Jarius Sneed.
Yep.
Okay, Eric?
I think that they get a deal done with Jones, and I think that they franchise Sneed. I would say I'm a little less confident in that second one, just because I think they learned from the year 2020 where they tried to run it back and there wasn't enough new blood on the team. And that ultimately, I think cost them at the end where they kind of ran out of gas in 20 and 21. So I could see them just moving on from Sneed altogether, as Jeff said, but I do think they try to get Jones done.
Yeah, I think they walk on Sneed, and I almost think he knows it because his comments afterwards about pay me, so demonstrative are not the comments of a guy who thinks he's about to get a deal done, right? They're the comments of a guy who thinks, I'm going to rattle a cage here and let it be known. So that's my read on that, is that Sneed doesn't see it coming together. So why would I? But I do think there's an affinity for Chris Jones. He is exactly what Steve Spagnuolo wants. There's a little bit better aging history. I think I personally would walk. I would try to franchise and trade. The way you said, Jeff, I think that they've, the dog pile Andy Reid on Chris Jones. I think Andy Reid's banging the drum to keep Chris Jones around.
But I guess the question is, like I'm saying, is it a mistake though? I mean, it's not just about do they want to keep him there. It's like, are you getting too emotionally attached to this and not realizing that, well, hey, this could be some downside to this as well?
I think it would be a mistake, but I'm also the guy that would have traded him for the best deal I could have gotten the last time his contract came up, and they've won 3 championships with him, or 2 more since that contract. Yeah. So, listen, I'm always about being cap efficient. Like I think the Amenahu Edwards Tranquil combo is worth more than Chris Jones, right? So if you can walk on Chris Jones, get some draft picks for next year, and then be able to sign quality defenders to replace Chris Jones, wow, I would rather do that. I would always rather have 3 players than 1. And I think that's how your defense, I think unless you, and who's Derek Thomas anymore in the game, that truly elite explosive edge guy. But even that's like a first contract guy, because by the second contract, they lose that explosion. So much of defense is about guys that are 27 or younger in my mind. I mean, there's Eric, you had to have run some numbers. How many defenders are actually good ages 28 plus?
No, it's not that high. I do think, offensive linemen obviously age better. Defensive backs, like safeties, age okay. But yeah, I mean, most of these guys, they get they generate the half of their career WAR before the 40% to 50% of their career WAR by the time they're 25, right? And Jones is already well past that. So yeah, it's not easy, and it's not easy to walk from a player who has won 3 Super Bowls for this team as a cornerstone defensive player.
So here's another question about Chris Jones that we're not asking is worst case scenario, you franchise him, and then he's sitting here saying, I'm not signing this deal. And then you can't go out and get the big ticket things you want to fill out the rest of your roster. Like that's the game that's within the game, right?
I think if Chris Jones is staying, a deal will be done before they have to put the tag on him. Like I think right now, to Eric's point, they're working furiously, and they're going to find out whether or not they can get it done. And there's a plan A and there's a plan B. There's with Chris Jones, there's without. If they get Chris Jones before they have to put that tag on him, great. Otherwise, they walk. I don't think you can, unless you or they're working on a trade. We're telling everybody we're going to franchise him. What do you give us? And it'll be very quick. Do we agree? Jeff just painted the picture. They can't sit holding $32 million of Chris Jones all the way into July.
They can't. They tried to. I mean, the year they won the Super Bowl in 19, the pandemic year, they let Jones's franchise tag and Sammy Watkins kind of like hold him hostage basically the whole offseason. They couldn't make that team better. So, yeah, I agree. I think, but they have to act quickly. And remember, like, if you don't act quickly, 2020, the Colts traded for DeForest Buckner for pick 13, like right around now.
Yeah.
And that really screwed up the market for Jones because then I remember you and I were talking, Petro, it's like, were they going to trade 32 and Chris Jones to move up to get Henry Ruggs? Like that's how desperate you end up getting if you don't do it that way. And that's after free agency is over.
Yeah. No, I think we may see some big news out of this, this weekend. Like we said, we're taping a little bit early. So hopefully you're not going, yeah, they already did it. They already traded it. It could happen. The conversation's going on right now. If both of those guys are gone, then what's the plan, Jeff? What do you think the Chiefs do?
Well, I mean, look, they're still going to be a championship caliber team. It's just a question of who steps up. Like this time last year, we weren't sitting here saying, man, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, watch out for these 2 guys as the next, whatever, Hanford Dixon, who was the other guy in Cleveland, Frank Minifield combination in football. It's like
Eric Wright.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you hope that, Dave Merritt, the job he's been doing with the secondary, that he's developed these other guys, these younger guys to come in and play. You move one of those guys in across from McDuffie. And then you try to find a way to the other factor in here is Charles Omenihu is not going to be playing football probably until November at the earliest, right? And so your defensive line could take 2 hits. And so, yeah, you're going to have to really be creative in free agency. Maybe you look at Christian Wilkins if Chris Jones isn't your answer there, maybe someone like that. I mean, you're going to have to find some answers there. But I do trust that they're going to be able to figure some things out. They won't be a dominant defense, but they're not going to be awful either.
How would you go about if they walked in just aggressive in free agency, Eric?
Well, I think that you have to use the top end of the draft, and Brett Veach has had conviction in moving up and getting guys. I think you have to use the top end of the draft then to depending upon how the Jones and Sneed thing shakes out. I think now your needs are interior defensive line, tackle, your offensive tackle, and then you also have to think about wide receiver. So that's also probably top of mind is you only have so many draft picks. You only have so many premium position players.
The Red Gold and Bold podcast proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crew. Every project comes with a written warning. GAN Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Get that parking lot in shape. Make a great first impression with your business. Call GAN Asphalt and Concrete at 816-484-3338. Find them online at GANasphalt.com. Free agency with the wide receivers. Is there one that makes sense? Eric just touched on that. Jeff, do you see a direction that they would go? News coming out, T. Higgins would be everybody's dream. Hurt the Bengals and help the Chiefs as we've talked about all along, they're going to franchise him. I think that's been a no-brainer. So assuming that news is true, which it makes all the sense in the world, is there anything in free agency that makes sense for the Chiefs?
I got to chuckle at all the people who've asked me about Mike Evans or T. Higgins and people like those guys are $25 million a year plus type guys. So they're already out of the price range of the Chiefs. And as you mentioned, T. Higgins isn't going anywhere because of the franchise tag. Cincinnati, I look at someone like a Marquise Brown in Arizona who seems to fit what they want. They need to, if MBS isn't here next year, which is a good possibility given his production and his cost. He can give you that deep speed. He's not as big as MBS, but I don't think that really matters in terms of what he would bring to the table. Calvin Ridley, somebody else, but I imagine he's also going to be in that higher price range. But, and there's some weird stuff about what they got to give Atlanta a draft pick or a high draft pick, depending on what they do with him in Jacksonville, which may muddle that up. But if I was going to pick somebody who would make sense, it'd be someone like a Marquise Brown.
All right. Eric, anything on free agency make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't be surprised if they went after Mike Evans, right? They've done this. They went after Trent Williams. They went after Joe Thuney. They've gone after they in positions of need, they have been aggressive in free agency. So Evans, I think, could be a player that they at least bid on. But I agree with Jeff. Like the one name, and I know he dropped the pass in the NFC Championship game and people got mad at him, but Josh Reynolds has been a player that they tried to sign a number of times. I think that ultimately what he's produced in Detroit has shown that wasn't a bad evaluation on the part of Veach and company. Another player that I think that they could, spin the tires on is a guy like Kendrick Bourne, who is coming off of an injury, but was productive against them in the Super Bowl a few years ago and is a good football player. Curtis Samuel, somebody as well, who I think is kind of busted in Washington, but has some draft pedigree, and they always kind of prefer that. I do agree with Marquise Brown that's a player that they, kind of the type of player, with pedigree that they like, a first-round pick that they might go after. So there's a number of options there, but I would not rule out Mike Evans at all, no.
What about Gabe Davis? I think Curtis Samuel looks like the type of guy that they go after. They just haven't made a push for an older receiver. Right? When they went for Sammy Watkins, he was 25. He was, and to Eric's point about draft commodity, he was a high draft pick and everything, and they do seem to have an affinity for those guys. Their draft reports seem to carry more weight than actual NFL production. But what about Gabe Davis? He's 25. He's in that Sammy Watkins age. He is coming off, didn't play, he had a knee injury, and is kind of seems to be on and off the field, but he fits kind of their style, fits their age profile. Gabe Davis be a guy that they can make a run at?
Yeah. I mean, he's in that Marquise Brown category for me, or even I don't think Josh Reynolds is there, but guys who probably have some upside to them, who probably have a higher opinion of themselves, what they could be, and have shown the capability to be dominant at times, to be game breakers at times. The thing about Gabe Davis is that what are you going to pay him? For what you're going to get, because in Buffalo there was always the frustration of he's coming on and he's not. He's hurt. He's dropping passes. He's not. So it's just, are you just getting another Marquez Valdez-Scantling, a guy who can tantalize you with his skill set, but then ultimately disappoint you? I don't know if they want to go down that road again, but he would make sense. He'd be in that category of guys I would look at, not the type A, Mike Evans.
Well, Eric, are we putting the battery in backwards here? I mean, who are they going to keep? Maybe that's the better place to stay. To start is who Rashee Rice is going to be here.
Yeah.
Who else on that wide receiving core would you put your money down and say that guy's definitely going to be on the roster?
Yeah, it's Rice. I mean, they have been sentimental. I think I heard rumors that they kept MBS last year over Smith-Schuster in large part because of the playoffs and how he played in that Bengals game in the first place. It's so clean to let him go because you gained $12 million. I don't know what kind of locker. I've heard conflicting reports of what he's like in the locker room. Some players like him, but then I've heard also Patrick at times doesn't want to throw him the ball. And so, he could be a guy how far would you have to knock that price down if you're MBS from a You basically would have to go down to like what, 4 million for save 8, but or actually less than even more than that. You'd have to knock you'd have to go down to like league minimum, I think, for the Chiefs to want to keep him, which, to your point, some other team is going to look at his speed and his previous production and traits, and they're going to want him, right? So if your MVS is aging, you're just like, well, just cut me then. So he's gone, I think, and then Hardman's a free agent. He's probably gone. I would just say, like, you probably assume Rice, and then that's probably it.
Sky Moore? Nick, you up on Sky Moore?
Sky Moore will be here for sure, but I don't think that there's a role for him, right, on this team. I just don't know. Justin Watson, is he on a 2-year deal?
A 1-year deal. Yeah.
1-year deal. I don't know. I mean, he was third
Richie
on the
James
team in receiving, 460 yards, which is insane. But I think it's Sky Moore, it's Rashee Rice, and then they just signed Cornell Powell back, right? Like that's where we're at.
Yeah. Justin Watson, come on.
Watson is he is.
Oh, he has a year left. So Watson has a year left. So I'd say Watson comes back.
I think Watson's back. I'm with you. I think that they will go to MVS because if they need a speed guy to take the top off the defense, and we saw him do it. They brought McCole Hardman back to help because MVS wasn't getting it done. Hardman's a free agent. I think they offer both of those guys similar deals. First one to take it gets it. Either they cut MVS or they keep Hardman. And I think they'd rather have MVS because he at least sometimes catches the deep ball. The Super Bowl notwithstanding, and I think Mahomes purposely threw the ball short. McCole Hardman to be able to turn around and gauge it the same way MVS has to turn around and body catch it. But like kind of one of those Juju Smith-Schuster deals, like $3 million guaranteed with incentives that can take it to 9. That, take you back to 11, take you back to the number you were going to be at MVS, but you got to do it with production. And if he doesn't want that, then they move on. But if he doesn't want to do that, then they need McCole Hardman to stretch the field. They always have, like, one of the first free agents. You remember one of the first free agents they signed in 2013 when Andy Reid got here? Donnie Avery.
Yeah.
I mean, they always have some speed guy, whether they're productive or not, somebody that can run fast down the field. So somebody will play that role. We agree with that, right?
Yeah. You think they'd give that kind of a deal to Hardman, a 3-year deal?
No. 1 year.
1 year, $3 million.
1 year to Hardman.
$3 million. With incentives that could take it. Hardman, I don't even think would get to 11, but I can see them telling, because that's what they did with Sammy Watkins his last year. Hey, we're going to bring the base down, but if you're productive, you can still get back to the number we were going to pay you. I think that's the trick they try on MVS. And I think he'd be wise to take it, to be honest with you, because what's he worth on the open market? He's worth more to the Chiefs than he is anybody else, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, Marcos Valdes-Scantling has never not played for an MVP quarterback. I think, like, if he's honest with himself, he wants to play with an MVP kind of quarterback, but I don't think we've ever seen any self-reflection out of him. So I'm guessing that we would probably see him test the market.
KJ Osborne, by the way, I'm just scrolling through every wideout out there. Anybody like KJ Osborne?
He's kind of in that same category. It's going to be someone like that. Again, it's the idea that it would be a top tier guy. Like I know Mike Evans' agent, and he's just like, they're looking at Stephon Diggs and saying, we got to be in that territory when it comes to money, because he played better than Stephon Diggs. So, it's going to be somebody who has talent, but is also very affordable.
Eric, what happens to left tackle?
I think they go into the draft like last year with Wanya Morris as the left tackle of the future. And if there isn't a tackle that falls to them at 32 that they like, they go into the bargain basement and get this year's Donovan Smith.
Could it be Donovan Smith?
Yeah.
It could be Donovan Smith. But like, if you look at free agency, right? If you look at free agent left tackles, like, it is the same song and dance every year. You have Tyron Smith. I don't know, like, Tyron Smith's of an age where he might hold out, right? Yeah. Andres Pete. The one that is interesting to me is Joshua Nijman, who like lost his job in Green Bay, but like has shown flashes in the past. Donovan Smith, George Fant, Cameron. Like, there's just a lot of guys who have started before. Josh Jones might be an interesting one. He has some pedigree, and they do like pedigree guys out of Houston, both Texans, but also the Cougars, where he went to college. Like, there's not any good free agents other than Tyron Smith.
Who's the guy in Jacksonville? Cam, what's his name? I forget his
Cam
name.
Robinson.
Yeah. Didn't he get cut? Is he getting cut?
He could get cut, yeah. And then but like I when's the last time a team cut a player and the Chiefs signed him to a real deal?
Yeah.
Stanford route.
Yeah.
Wasn't Donovan Smith the cap cut in Tampa?
Like, but in the real free agency period. What I'm saying is,
like
if they wait until after the draft, then I think they'll just and they don't find the guy they like, or they're not thrilled with Wanya Morris's development, then they'll go and get a Donovan Smith. But like, I don't think that they're gonna like if Cam Robinson gets cut by the Jags, he'll get signed by a real team or signed to a real deal.
Yeah.
In March to be a starting tackle. I don't think the Chiefs roll that way.
You think they flirt with the idea of Jawan Taylor at left tackle again?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Yes, I do. I think that's the fallback. That if they can't, because listen, I thought Donovan Smith was better than most people thought he was. I thought he did a fine job.
Down the stretch, yeah.
You know what he is. You'd like better, but hey, we know which guys we got to help. And we know if he can get his hands on a guy, he's all right. Did okay in the run. I think he's a pretty good run blocker. I think he's strong. And so I think if you said, listen, we put Jawan Taylor over there, we're not worse. Maybe we're not better. We're more athletic. We're different. But they've learned to help their tackles, right? Like I think Andy Reid would love to go back to his Philly days where he had two bookends there. And, and I think Jawan Taylor kind of grew into that on the right side more down the stretch. I don't think he's ever going to be a star. But if you put him over there, and you went and got Trent Brown play on the right side, or do you do the same thing? Jawan's comfortable on the right. We'll be there. We'll help Trent Brown. I don't think they love the idea of going after 30-something-year-old guys. And that's why I think my answer to this would be, I think Eric's right. If they're going to move up, I like this idea, and I floated this all week on my radio show, getting out from under L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones, trading either one of them if you can for more picks, but just taking the draft pick compensation of free agency if they walk, and trading next year's first with this year's first in an effort to move up and get your answer at left tackle for years to come. Like if you put two firsts together, you can get into the teens easily, right? Maybe even up to 15, 12. We did this exercise. We took, Matt Miller's top 16, the 16 players he says are real first rounders. And then we took another mock draft and said, okay, here's where those guys are falling. You got to get to at least 18 to get a tackle, right? The Penn State tackle was it, or the Oregon State was one of his three left tackles. So you got to get to at least 18. Like that to me is your answer. Like let's solidify this premium spot for years to come. Maybe we can't get, Mitchell Schwartz, the best at the position, but we can get good enough. We've learned to help. Andy Reid's okay now with not sending everybody out on the get-go. So let's solve that, and let's go up and get a left tackle. And if Joe Alt lasts to 10 or 12, and you give up 2 firsts and a third, but you know that is done, and you're going to get an extra couple of thirds and, have some more ammunition to fill the other positions next year, don't you like that long-term? I do.
Offensive line, though, is a tough position because it takes forever for them to mature, right? The reason that they signed Jawan Taylor to the deal that they did is not because he was great in Jacksonville. They signed him to the deal that he did because he's athletic, he has pedigree, and he has potential. I worry that if you do that for a lineman and he takes 2 years, like Andrew Thomas was terrible in the first year of his career. Evan Neal was terrible the first 2 years of his career. We don't even know if he's going to be good in general. If you do that and then the guy struggles in year one, and like that's where I worry. I get that. I don't mind it at all. I'm just thinking like, how much different is that than like Wanya Morris / the 32nd pick, whatever tackle that guy ends up being.
You got to believe in the player anytime you trade up, right? Like you and I both are big trade down guys, but if there's the player you believe in, to me, then you've solved that for at least 5 years and hopefully more because you're putting an extension on him. Jeff, I mean.
Yeah, well, look, I think one thing that is definitely true of what Andy Reid, and you mentioned it a little bit, is that he's learned to adapt to what he has as opposed to saying, I've got this rocket star quarterback. We're going to throw the ball 5 out no matter what happens. I've been impressed by how they've maximized that position over the last couple of years, because if you had told me 2 years ago they were going to take Orlando Brown Jr. and Donovan Smith and win 2 championships with those guys, I would have laughed at you. So there's certainly a blueprint now that they can work off of. And I think it's probably a combination of both you guys are saying. I don't know if they have to go all in to try to, try to find a foundational piece at that position. But I do believe they're a lot more amenable to the idea of we'll just kind of keep piecing this together until we find an option that really makes sense to us.
Yeah. Jonah Williams? Anybody?
Yeah, that's Eric's backyard right there.
Bengals, Jonah Williams?
If he couldn't keep a job there, it's hard to see him.
The Bengals wanted Orlando Brown to play left tackle instead of him.
I know. And do they still think they made the better deal?
Well, I don't think that they want to turn back to Jonah Williams. I think that they realize Orlando Brown's kind of a stiff.
I just think of the pedigree part of the equation that you always talk about.
The Chiefs love former first rounders. That's for sure.
They do.
I mean, we're going to talk about the punter here, right? Like, That's a total Brett Veach play. Like he's going to like the guy that he liked coming out of the draft, and like it's sort of like they just ignore what happened in the NFL the last 4 years whenever they evaluate these players.
Red, Gold, and Bold, proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear since 1994. Make a great first impression with a beautiful, smooth parking lot. Cut down on liability, accidents in your lot. Get your parking lot restriped today. It will cut down on issues. It will keep you focused on your business, keep your lot as safe as possible. The seal coating. A great way to keep the parking lot lasting even longer. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Let's talk about their biggest need. What is the Kansas City Chiefs' biggest need as they head into the offseason, Jeff?
That's receiver. I mean, it's they've got to go find receivers they can count on. What they did this year with the group that they had and what they went through, it's astonishing that they won a championship. I mean, I'll just be blunt about it with that group of receivers and the way that they wanted to play football. They adjusted. They found a way to make it work. But as we said earlier, it's highly conceivable that 70% of that room is different this coming year. And it's a really good time to be looking for receivers because there's so many of them coming out of college, and there's going to be some in free agency that are going to be more attractive than others. But they have to find a couple more guys they can trust because I don't feel like as great as Travis Kelce played in the postseason, I'm not going to minimize how he looked in the second half of the season. And if you're going to have the odds of that being a longer stretch this coming year go up because he's getting older. So you're going to have somebody else you can rely on aside from Rashee Rice.
Eric?
Yeah, receiver, because they not only need top end play. I know Rice is great, but I think in a perfect world, Rice is your second player there, but they also need depth. They need guys. They need wide receiver 3, 4, and 5 to be better as well. So to me, it's that. And then from there, it shakes out they need a nose tackle. They need a left tackle, and they need linebacker depth. That's sneaking up on them with Willie Gay and Drew Tranquill as free agents.
The quantity is definitely wide out because you play a lot of them, and they have question marks everywhere. I mean, I think Rashee Rice and Justin Watson are the only guys that are definitely going to be back. And Watson, you don't want as your number 2. Okay, so let's be clear about that. You ideally want him at 3, and ideally you want him at 4, and playing on special teams. Maybe even lower you want him. But the number one priority is left tackle. I mean, like you that's why I'll go back to what I said about trading up in the draft. If you can solve that issue, you can. I don't think unless Patrick Mahomes is like, I'm not throwing in this collection of clowns again, right? If Patrick Mahomes is knocking on the door of Brett Veach's office like, hey, we did it, but no more, right? Go get me some guys. If Patrick Mahomes says wideout's number 1, then wideout's number 1, and do everything you can to make that guy happy because you can't have a pissed off quarterback who wants out of town, right? We've seen it, with Tom Brady leaving the Patriots. It's devastating. But if he's on board that, hey, listen, we're going to keep throwing numbers at those second and third rounds. We're going to bring in a couple of guys. We're We're going to find another Rashee Rice. Stay with us. When we get our shot, we'll take it. But protecting him, priority number one. I think it's left tackle.
So you don't believe in Wanye Morris?
Not at all. Not for 1 second. Do you?
Eric says, hey, give some guys time to develop. The guy played for like 3 games, and you're like, let's get him out of here.
No, I don't. I don't. Like, I did. First of all, the body does not look like a left tackle. The body looks like a guard. Okay? I'm just going to say he's an oddly shaped man. And we're talking about a position that is the most athletic of the offensive line. I don't remember. Listen, I'm at a guard, lead in the ass. That's a term that offensive line coaches have used for years. They like a little weight, a little anchor there, but he is a snowman, and that does not translate into athletic get out on the edge guys. Like, no, I don't, and I hope he proves me wrong. Like every Kansas City Chief, I hope they're the best ever at their position. But you want an honest evaluation? No, I don't see it. They have taken a number of tackles in that like 3rd round range, and not one of them has ever peed a drop. Remember, what was it, Brown from Oklahoma that they brought in? Now, it's not all on Brett Veach's watch, but they took a 3rd round pick here.
Who's that?
I think it was the Dorsey era, which Brett Veach was at least in on the calculus of it. They took, who was this guy? He was a local kid. He's from Blue Springs.
Huh. I remember him.
For
obvious reasons, apparently he couldn't play.
I take that back. It was not this regime. It was Donald Stevenson.
Okay.
Yeah, Donald Stevenson was a marshmallow, but that's not Brett Veach's fault.
Was Wanya Morris strike you as anything?
Yeah.
You don't think marshmallow when you see that guy run up?
6'5", 307. Like, that's a big boy.
The 307 was a junior in high school weight that they're using on that. No chance.
23 years old. I don't know.
Was Stevenson before they went and got Mitchell Schwartz? Is that what led to the Mitchell Schwartz move?
Yeah, that was part of it. I can't even remember. The fact that he didn't take the job was part of the reason why they went out.
Barry Richardson. Like, you're talking about guys who are like, like Scott Pioli as a guy, but those are Scott Pioli guys.
All right, last thing. They went out and they signed Matt Araiza. What do you think of the signing, Jeff?
Well, it tells you Tommy Townsend's time here is done. Look, I mean, Araiza was supposed to be a star when the Bills went and drafted him, and if he hadn't gotten caught up in all that drama in college, that he probably would have been at least talked about as one of the better punters in the league right now. So it's a typical Brett Veach move where you're taking a guy who has talent, who you probably scouted, you probably thought highly of. I'm sure Dave Tobe signed off on it and talked about the potential of this guy because he's, Dave Tobe's, as much as we have gotten on him for some of the things he's done with special teams, he was the one who said, let's go in and get Harrison Butker and get rid of Cairo Santos. And he was the guy who said, let's go get Tommy Townsend and get rid of Dustin Colquitt. And so I'm guessing that this works out for him.
Eric, what's your reaction?
Well, I lost a decent amount of money betting the draft in 2022 because I bet him to be the first punter taken, and he wasn't, which I think should tell us something. His data is actually not that good at anything but kicking like 80-yard punts. Like, he's not a good pooch punter. He's not a good angle guy. So I would just temper expectations.
Now, wait, real quick. Those are college numbers that you're coming with, though, right?
Right. So, but like anybody who bet any kind of money on college football in the last 10 years knows what San Diego State football is like, which is you get to the 35, your quarterback throws 3 worm burners, and you punt it 70 yards to the other team's end zone, and you play defense. And that game, the total is 39.5, and it goes under. That is every San Diego State game. That's different than what the Chiefs play, which is, get to like the other team's 40 and have to pooch punt and angle him down. I don't see evidence that he can do that. That's my one worry about him is he actually has to develop as a actual NFL punter. He has a hell of a leg, but that's my only worry about him.
Harrison Butker was not an accurate kicker at Georgia Tech, right? And I had and when they signed him, it's like, well, he's got distance. He doesn't have the accuracy, and he immediately became accurate with Kansas City. Why? And I think it's Dave Toub, but I think it's also colleges. I've talked with some kickers, and they're like, listen, we never actually get to practice like the real kicking.
Yeah.
They're just over on the side, kicking by themselves. They don't ever actually get a line up. They get crappy footballs. They get, they're like, I've been told by kickers, it's so much easier to be good in the NFL. This is kickers. I haven't had this conversation with punters, but it's so much easier to be good in the NFL as a place kicker than it was in college. Because they really didn't mess with us. It's just like, go over there and do your thing. And then all of a sudden you got to come out, and the first time you've gotten a snap with blocking is in a game, right? Because we didn't have time for it. It was always cut from the practice deal. So I've heard that, and we watch Harrison Butker become one of the most accurate kickers right away. Combination of maybe what I've been told. Harrison Butker worked hard, but Dave Toub is pretty good at this crap, right? And so to Jeff's point, I'm with you, Eric. I think there are cautionary tales, and I think there will be growing pains. But Tommy Townsend, the contract year is undefeated, except for that guy. He regressed big time last year. So
he was bad.
Yeah, he was. And so I don't mind him moving on. I do worry about the holds, going backwards with the holds for Harrison Butker. But the contract, I think, has got a split. It's only so much if they cut him and so much if he's injured. And maybe it's just if he's injured. I'd really like to see the specifics because what I can see? Another veteran punter being brought in or Townsend coming back on a one-year deal that's cheap. And the mystery injury. Oh, grabbing the hammy on that third preseason game and limping off the field, and him spending a year, as an apprenticeship here and learning the punting position. When I heard there's something kind of like a way out on the contract based on injury and stuff, I'm like, I already see that injury in the preseason. But listen, we can agree on this. Dave Toub, if he's worth the salt, should turn this guy. He's got the tools.
Yeah.
Now this is Dave Toub. Since we're not returning kicks much anymore, this is your chance to earn your money. Dave Toub needs to turn this guy into a top shelf punter.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, but nobody has a problem with the background. Nobody even mentioned the background. We're all good with the fact that since he was taken out and said to not be at that party, we're all good.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is the overriding issue, right?
Classic Chiefs, Chiefs are taking chances on these kind of people the entire Andy Reid era, and it has rarely bitten them in the ass, right? Kareem Hunt is the one example of it. Kind of, Willie Gay was suspended once, but he was acquitted of everything, right?
Tyreek Hill, yeah,
that was Kelsey. Yeah, they've gone down that road and been pretty successful. Yeah, I agree. All right, listen, we're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. No commissions, in-house crews. A written warranty comes with every project. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Beautiful weather's right around the corner. That means all their services very soon will be in effect. So go to GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us